Do your guitar tracks sound disappointingly narrow? Like they're just buried in a mix, no matter how hard you pan them? It's a super frustrating problem that can make your whole production feel small. You record these huge sounding parts, but in the track, they just feel like a thick mono blob in the center. Well, today, I'm going to show you 3 simple but powerful tricks you can use right inside your DAW to instantly create massive stereo width and give your guitars that professional separation you've been looking for. Before we dive in, let's quickly talk about why this happens. Why do guitars you've panned hard left and hard right sound like they're stuck in the middle? It all comes down to a bit of psychoacoustics, basically how our brains process sound. First off, even if you've double tracked and panned your guitars, if the low end is too similar in both tracks, our brain just sums it all to mono. Our ears aren't great at telling where low frequencies are coming from, so any rumble or mud below about 150 hertz tends to collapse right back down to the center, and it drags your guitars right along with it. Second, there's the issue of phase. If you have 2 guitar tracks that are extremely similar, same guitar, same amp, played almost identically, they can be so in phase that they don't create enough of a difference for your brain to hear a wide stereo image. Instead of 2 distinct guitars, you just hear more like one fat mono guitar in the middle. So the real secret to width isn't just panning. It's about creating intentional controlled differences between your left and right speakers. These 3 techniques are all designed to do exactly that, by playing with frequency and phase in a way that sounds powerful and, most importantly, musical. So, are you ready to build our foundation for width? Let's start with the most important step of all. So first up, and honestly, this is the most important step, is cleaning up the mud. This is the foundation for everything else. If your guitars are full of unnecessary low end, they will never sound truly wide. That sub-frequency energy, anything below 100 hertz, sometimes up to 150 hertz, doesn't add much to a rhythm guitar tone, but it eats up your headroom and can make your stereo image feel congested. Let's hop in the DAW and I'll show you what I mean. I have 2 heavy rhythm guitar tracks here, double tracked and panned hard left and right. They sound big, but there's a certain thickness in the center that feels muddy. It's not clean. To really hear the problem, I'm going to throw a low-pass filter on both tracks and set it to about 200 hertz, so we only hear the low end. Now, listen to this. Even though they're panned 100% left and right, all that rumble sounds like it's coming straight from the middle. That's the mono buildup that's killing our width. Now for the fix. I'm bypassing that low-pass filter and adding a high-pass filter to both tracks instead. For heavy guitars, a good starting point is somewhere between 80 Hz and 150 Hz. I'll start with the filter all the way down and slowly sweep it up. Listen as I do this. Right around 100 Hz, you can just hear the mud fall away. The guitars suddenly feel lighter, and the spread between the left and right speakers becomes more obvious. The mids and highs, which our ears actually use to locate sounds, are no longer being suffocated by the centered sludge. Let's do one final quick A/B. Here are the guitars before the filter. And here they are after. The after version is clearer, wider, and has more punch because the important frequencies finally have room to breathe. Now, the trap here is getting too aggressive. If you set your filter too high, your guitars will sound thin and lose all their power. The key is to listen in the context of the full mix with the bass and kick drum playing. You want to filter just enough to get rid of the mud without stepping on the toes of the bass guitar. But cleaning up the mud is just the first step. What if your guitars are clean, but still sound like 2 copies of the exact same track? Next, we'll solve that by giving each guitar its own unique sonic identity. So you've high-passed your guitars, and they're already sounding wider, but maybe they still feel a little identical. They sound like 2 sides of the same coin instead of 2 distinct forces on the left and right. That happens when your 2 guitar takes are too similar tonally. Our brains are clever. If the sound from the left and right speakers is almost the same, it goes, that's one sound in the middle. The solution is a classic studio trick. We introduce small, complementary EQ differences. This creates subtle tonal variations that trick the brain into hearing a much wider, more interesting stereo field. Let's jump back in the DAW. I've got my 2-panned high-pass guitars. I'll add an EQ to the left guitar. I'm going to find a spot in the mid-range between 8 and 900 Hz and give a gentle boost, maybe 1.5 dB. Then I'll find another spot in the upper mids around 3.1K, and I'll do the opposite, a 1.5 dB cut. The way I find these two EQ spots to pick is I'll just kind of sweep around the frequency till I find two spots that I like, and those are the two frequencies I've chosen here. Next, I'll copy that same EQ over to the right guitar, but here's the magic. I'm going to invert the settings. Where I boost it on the left, I'll cut on the right. So the right guitar gets a negative 1.5 dB cut between 8 and 900 Hz and a 1.5 dB boost at around 3.1 kHz. What we're doing here is creating little frequency pockets. Between that 8 and 900 Hz, the left guitar is a bit more prominent, and at the 3.1 kHz, the right guitar steps forward. The differences are subtle, but they prevent the guitars from fighting over the exact same space and really enhance that feeling of separation. Let's A/B this. Here are the guitars with the same EQ. Now, here they are with the opposing EQ curves. It's not just wider, it feels more three-dimensional. Each side has its own little sonic footprint. You could take this idea even further. Try using different amp heads for each side, or different guitars, or even a tiny change in mic placement on one side can create that necessary difference. The main pitfall here is going to extremes. Big boosts or cuts over 3 dB can sound unnatural and might create weird phase issues known as comb filtering when you check in mono. The goal is subtle enhancement, not a complete sonic makeover. Okay, our guitars are clean, wide, and have character. Now it's time for the final polish. We've built a solid, wide foundation with filtering and EQ. This last step will take our guitars from wide to outside the speakers. This is where we can use a dedicated stereo widening plugin, but we have to be smart about it. The biggest mistake people make with wideners is just slapping them on and cranking the knob, which usually gives you a phasey, washed out sound that completely vanishes in mono. The secret is to be subtle and, crucially, to focus the widening effect only on the mid-range, where the guitars really live and breathe. We don't want to widen the low end. That just brings back the mud we worked so hard to get rid of. For this, it's best to route both guitar tracks to a single stereo bus or group. This lets us process them together. On this guitar bus, I'm going to use a specific plugin that I love for this, the Side Widener 2 from Joey Sturgis Tones. The key with this plugin is to engage the mid-range pusher setting. This does exactly what we want. It focuses the widening effect on the mid-range frequencies where the guitars really shine. By widening this range, we get that awesome, wraps around your head feeling without creating a phasey mess down low. So watch this. I'm going to slowly increase the width knob. I'm going to only take it to about 14%. With a plugin this powerful, a little goes a very long way. Let's listen to the before and after. Here it is bypassed. And here it is engaged. The difference is subtle, but it adds this satisfying dimension. The guitars seem to stretch beyond the speakers, giving the mix a professional sheen and an energy that wasn't there before. The number one pitfall here is destroying your mono compatibility. Pushing a widener too hard is the fastest way to make your guitars disappear in mono. The great thing about the JST Side Widener plugin is that it is fully mono compatible. Now let's listen in the context of a full mix. First, with everything we did bypassed. And now, here's how it sounds with everything we did to improve the stereo width. It's subtle, but with that processing off, everything just feels a bit more flat. So we've covered the three core techniques: cleaning the lows with a high-pass filter, creating character with opposing EQ, and adding polish with a subtle widener. The real magic, of course, is when you combine them. But there's one more crucial concept that makes it all work: contrast. For your wide guitars to sound truly huge, other key elements in your mix need to be narrow. Your kick, snare, bass, and lead vocal should live right in the center. This creates a powerful push and pull. The solid focus center anchors the track, which by comparison makes the guitars on the sides feel even wider and more expansive. Another great trick is using automation. Make your guitars even wider during the choruses so they explode with energy, then narrow them a bit for the verses to create a more intimate feel. That kind of dynamic shift can make your song so much more engaging. So to recap, the three essential techniques: You filter the foundation. You use a high-pass filter to cut the mud below 100 to sometimes up to 150 hertz. This is the most important step for clean width. Next is you're going to EQ for character. Use small opposing EQ boosts and cuts on your left and right guitars to create tonal separation. Then you're going to widen and polish. Use a stereo widener subtly and only on the mid-range to add that final professional dimension. And the golden rule over all of this is constantly check your mix in mono to make sure nothing disappears. If you follow these steps, you can finally transform your buried guitars into the massive, wide, and professional sounding tracks you've been looking for. If you got any value out of this video, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more mixing tips just like this one. And if you're in a band and you want your music to sound as powerful as possible, I also offer professional mixing services. If you'd like to work with me, click the link in the description. Now I have a question for you. What's your #1 favorite trick for getting wide sounding guitars? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to see what techniques you're all using.